Hi, we're in Ketchikan, outside of it actually, and we are in a temperate rainforest looking at a variety of different species, about 4 or 5 species of trees, with hemlocks being the most common. And this area receives double the amount of rainfall needed to be considered a rainforest, but the latitude is what gives us the temperate designation. And I want you to notice how thick the material is that's on these hemlocks. That is actually indicative of a healthy environment. You can see the same type of environment if you went to Ho's uh, Temperate Rainforest in Olympic National Park. As we began to look at some of the other species like cedars, there's some red and yellow cedars. There's also a number of mosses that grow there, not just on the floor, but from the trees, and even fruit. So this is a good look at an actual rain. We were walking, hiking in the rain, and these are some blueberries that exist there. And just about every day it rains to help these fruits like the salmon berry that you're seeing here to thrive in the rainforest. But those aren't the only organisms that live there. The banana slug, this is kind of a cool guy, another shot of him right here, can be seen crawling on the trees and the moss, on leaves. But the trees themselves can serve as habitat not just for mammals like birds, but also for things like bears, which is the only species of bears that live on Ketchikan. Evidence of the bears are seen here by the scratches on the trees. Some of our groups saw some bears. We did not. What a bummer, huh? In contrast, we saw bald eagles everywhere that we went in Alaska. These were in the rainforest that we were visiting, and you could look up in the treetops on power lines. These guys were looking for food, and we'll talk about their food resource in a minute. This happened to be a raptor sanctuary. This was a injured bald eagle. And then there was a barred owl. We'll show you him in a few minutes. And a type of falcon. But each of these are provided habitat in this place so they can continue to live. But the birds who are in the wild are living on salmon. So let's talk more about the salmon because they're kind of the heart of the ecosystem that exists here. While most of these raptors are in captivity, there are many that are not, and other marine mammals like the seal come in to feed on what we're fixing to show you. Hi, we're at the Alaskan Temperate Rainforest outside of Ketchikan, and I want to point out a fisheries behind me for salmon. And that's important because literally millions of eggs can get hatched, and in order to allow these to reach adulthood and continue the process of getting a good salmon repopulation, this is one way of intervention for conservation. The salmon hatchery is not just important to this local area, but on a wider scale to the marine mammals that come in to feed, to black bears that live in Ketchikan, to humans who use it not just as a food resource, but an economic resource. When you start thinking about all of that, you're like, well, how does that relate to geology? Well, here's some phyllite, which is a metamorphic rock that's one step up from slate. You can see its shiny texture from mica. And it actually has that kind of wavy appearance on the surface. So why does that play a role in the geology of Ketchikan? As this rock cleaves or breaks apart, it literally kind of comes apart like a deck of cards or even a loaf of bread that's been sliced. And as we walked through town, we could see that the phyllite had been metamorphosed, that it had been blasted. That's what these long linear vertical lines are, to make room for buildings and tourism and homes along the coastline. In addition, we could see that there were best management practices like these, which are rock bolts, to help anchor in that material to reduce the potential for mass wasting. Definitely a problem from what we saw as we were walking through town and the drive we took out to the sanctuary and back for the rainforest. So think about that and what that can mean for potential landslides, other problems that are in the area. Also keep in mind that this is a temperate rainforest, so the amount of rain is substantial, adding to the potential for extra weight to be in soil that could contribute to a mass wasting event. So let's connect the dots for geology to what you've learned thus far. This is Creek Street, which is a salmon run and a historic district within Ketchikan. So this is a river or a fluvial system, and it provides the habitat necessary for the salmon. And you can also see that metamorphic rock along the edges. And just to remind you, this is a temperate rainforest. This is the famous gauge for rain. But I have to take a moment and say, think about where we're located. This is in a tsunami-prone area in Alaska, and any kind of substantial earthquake in the Pacific Ring of Fire could trigger a tsunami here, which is definitely a geologic issue, and it would wreak havoc on industry, tourism, and the coast itself. Another thing to consider is the local economy. This is a totem pole maker, and he was demonstrating to us on our tour how these work, and they're basically stories, and each totem pole tells a different story. And this is located at the Rainforest Raptor Sanctuary. So all the totem poles that are here were made by either him or his predecessor. And many of them are related to the animals of this region, indicating that they are extremely important to people that live there of all cultures. And they're just remarkably beautiful. But this directly correlates back to the temperate rainforest with the wood that they can use. Also relates to how the temperate rainforest provides an ecosystem for these animals. When you get right down to it, it's this that makes it all work in terms of that ecosystem with the salmon. So bringing it full circle, the salmon needs the right habitat. The habitat is related to the geology and the climate. And the climate is changing. The population of the salmon are declining. So as we consider those facts and we kind of go back to that hatchery for salmon, humans are having to do intervention for conservation to make this all work. And that's important because without it, if we were to lose one of the 5 salmon species that exist in the Alaskan area, this could be absolutely devastating to an entire ecosystem, humans included, as well as industry and trade. So thoughts about that takes a little bit of time to digest just how important one organism can be to so many others. And then how humans play a role in that aspect in terms of either overfishing, overuse, pollution, contributing to climate change, altering the landscape, which can alter how, like, for example, rivers flow, as you saw the Creek Street and other areas of Ketchikan. So I wanted to show you that direct link with another place from Creek Street, and this is as a seal. And he's playing with what looks like a little orangey salmon color. That is salmon, and you'll see him bring it up to the surface in just a second. But this is the critical nature of how the ecosystem relates, all of it fitting together to sustain a group. Then we need to look at the tides, because as sea level changes with a warming climate, this is a problem for their high tides in this area. We happen to be approaching Ketchikan at high tide, and this was remarkable to me to actually see the tide coming in and how it impacted the city. So coastal areas will be impacted as sea level rises on a global scale. A lot to take in, but important topics. I hope you get a chance to visit Ketchikan yourself, but expect that you'll need some rain gear because it is definitely wet most days of the year.